Grant Holmes gives the Atlanta Braves exactly what they were needing. Austin Riley homers twice in a big win over the Blue Jays on Monday. We'll talk about that. And also, what did the Atlanta Braves do with this disastrous outfield situation? We'll talk about all that on today's episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastroianni. You can follow me on social media at shortstopball. Check out the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves and on Instagram at Locked On Braves. If you're new and watching this on YouTube, please do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit the thumbs up button and leave me a comment down below. Appreciate all your support here at Locked On Braves. If you're listening on the audio version, you can help me out by leaving me a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you so much for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. And we got a good one today because the Braves got a win 8-4 over the Blue Jays on Monday. We'll talk about that game, Grant Holmes' performance, which was much needed. Austin Riley stays hot. And in the second segment, we'll get into this outfield situation. It's been one of the worst outfields in all of baseball so far this year. How do things get better? We'll talk about all that and then set you up for Tuesday's game with Spencer Schwellenbach going on the mound, trying to help the Braves win back-to-back games for the first time this year. Yes, we are in the middle of April. The Braves have not won back-to-back games yet. That's how bad things have been. But we'll get into all that on today's episode of Locked On Braves, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Well, the Braves won on Monday night, 8-4 over the Blue Jays. Became a little bit closer than maybe it should have, as the Braves had an 8-0 lead late in that game, and then the Blue Jays mounted a little bit of a comeback. But overall, a pretty comfortable, easy win for the Atlanta Braves, something that they had desperately been needing. And I think even more so what they had been needing was a starting pitcher to go deep into a ball game. Outside of Spencer Schwellenbach, nobody has been giving the Braves innings in the starting rotation, and specifically Grant Holmes, who only went 4 innings in each of his first 2 starts. Granted, those were both against the Dodgers and the Phillies. While the Blue Jays are right now a top 10 offense, it was a little bit of an easier matchup based on Grant Holmes' first 2 opponents, but he was the player of the game for me. We'll talk about Austin Riley in the big game that he had, and I discussed this on the postcast, but I think what the Braves needed more than anything was somebody to give them length. This bullpen has been taxed. It was already the weakest part of this team, what we thought was the weakest part of this team coming into the year, and it has been overworked early on. And that happens early in a season because starters just typically aren't going deep into games. But again, Grant Holmes not making it through 4 innings in his first 2 starts. A.J. Smith-Shawver struggling to get through 5 innings. Chris Sale unexpectedly not able to get through 5 innings consistently. They just haven't been able to get those innings from their starters, and this bullpen's been overworked. So to have a game like this where the offense, and it takes both parts, right? So the offense to be able to put up the big number like they did allows Grant Holmes, in my opinion, to not have to be so perfect, and he can be more aggressive in the zone, and allowed him to keep the pitch count down and go deeper into the ball game. So the perfect type of game that the Atlanta Braves were needing. Grant Holmes goes 7 2/3 innings, allows 3 runs on 2 hits, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts, 1 home run, 94 pitches, 63 strikes. Good to see for Grant Holmes. Like I said, 4 walks in each of his first 2 games. So good to see him really pound the strike zone. But again, I think that's a product of the situation of the game and the Braves jumping out to a big lead, allowing him to do that. Now, when you break down the analytics of this start, nothing is necessarily going to pop out to you to say that this was, a dominant performance by Grant Holmes. 7 hard hits against, that's fine, especially going 7 2/3 innings. Only 9 whiffs on 47 swings. That's just a 19% whiff rate. Not great, but 16 called strikes, and it ends up with a solid 27% called strike plus whiff rate. Again, for you who aren't familiar with that stat, I'm usually looking for around 30%. Anything over 30% is really good. So for him to only have a 19% whiff rate, but his CSW percentage still be close to 30, it just means he was pounding the strike zone. And I'll say it one more time, I think that's a product of the offense jumping out to a big lead, allowing him to do that. And I think that's really the biggest difference for Grant Holmes in this start compared to his first two, is that he was just more aggressive in the zone. Again, he gave up the 7 hard hits, but a lot of it, not at ideal launch angles. And there was a little bit of luck in there. You had the big hit by Vlad Jr., Michael Harris's great play there. That ball, was absolutely smoked. He had another long fly out in the game as well, and a couple of lineouts, but being able to throw more strikes consistently, miss the barrel of the bat is what he did great tonight. He either got a lot of ground balls or a lot of pop-ups. Their hitters weren't able to square him up consistently, and he limited the walks. So great start from Grant Holmes, exactly what you needed from a Brave starter, and exactly what Grant Holmes needed. Again, great competition in his first 2 starts, but not able to give the Braves more than 4 innings in each of those. You had to at least imagine that the Braves were considering moving him back to the bullpen at some point, and that might happen. But I think this start shows you what he can do, what he can be, and so it was a big start for him. Unfortunately, he lost things a little bit there in the 8th inning, wasn't able to complete it. Thought he might go complete game for a minute, but things kind of unraveled on him in the 8th inning, which not surprising. It's a guy who's a reliever who's now transitioning to a starter, not used to going that deep into a ball game. And then Aaron Bummer comes in, runners on the corner, 2 outs, immediately gives up a hit down into the left field corner that scores both runners. Going to give Aaron Bummer a huge pass in this outing, obviously coming off the bereavement list. Hasn't been thinking about baseball for the last several days, probably a little bit rusty. I thought it was a great spot to get him in there, though, in a low leverage game like that, to get his feet wet coming back. But unfortunately, those 2 inherited runners are charged to Grant Holmes that kind of ruin his line a little bit. On the offensive side of things, Austin Riley goes 2 for 4, 2 home runs, 5 RBI, 3 hard hit balls on the night, and he has been on fire. Multiple hits in 7 of his last 8 games. We talked about it in the early part of the season. He just looked completely lost, and that happens with Riley sometimes, and generally it seems to happen at the beginning of the season, but you can see it happen during certain spots. It's really been the thing for Austin Riley that I think has kept him from being that, perennial top MVP candidate, is that there are just times throughout the year where he just loses. He loses that pitch recognition, and you can tell that he's lost at the plate. That's where he was at the beginning. But that was my thing coming into last year for Austin Riley, is can you put a full season together? Because there just seems to be spots for him where he loses it. And that was the case to begin the year. But now he is certainly tracking. He's picking up that breaking ball a lot better, squaring up the baseball, making good contact, good pitch recognition. That's really what he was struggling with in those first 2 weeks. He was looking fastball, getting the off speed. He was looking breaking ball. He was getting the heater. And it was just, he wasn't picking up the pitches. And certainly was caught in between there, but he seems to be on time now. And we're talking about, over a week's worth of a performance now that Austin Riley has really been on it. Speaking of on it, Sean Murphy, another home run. I was excited about Sean Murphy coming into the season to begin with. I thought, he could bounce back from what was a disastrous 2024. Unfortunately, he gets injured in spring training and delays that. But now he, is possibly having that big, I don't want to say breakout season. He's been good before, but certainly it's a great start for Sean Murphy. I don't know if it's the glasses, whatever the case may be, but he has given this Braves offense a huge lift since coming back. It's unfortunate for Drake Baldwin, who had some good at-bats early on, good enough that the Braves, DFA'd Chadwick Tromp to keep him on the roster, but you can't take Sean Murphy out of this lineup right now. He has been a huge boost for this Braves offense. And I'm going to keep mentioning Matt Olson. I know nobody wants to hear it for a guy that's batting below 200, but he just continues to have great at-bats. He doesn't get a hit in this one. It's got to be the unluckiest 193 batting average you've ever seen. But what I liked about this game from Matt Olson is facing a lefty starter, he's probably frustrated that these balls aren't going down for hits, aren't going over the wall. He's just missing. But he didn't let that affect him in this game. He wasn't pressing and had some really good at-bats against the lefty to take some walks. And I thought that was really impressive by Matt Olson. Nick Allen, Eli White at the bottom of the order, doing some things, getting on base, using their speed. I love seeing that. And that's great to see. Maybe we'll get some more starts from Eli White. We'll talk about that more in the second segment. And then the only negative from this game really is that you had to warm Iglesias. I mentioned the bullpen has been taxed. So even, a game that you were up 8-0, having to get up your closer in the ninth inning, and I don't know how hot he got, but just the fact that you had to get him up is the only real negative in what was a great game for the Atlanta Braves. So we'll certainly take the positive there. And the Braves get an 8-4 win and got a chance to win back-to-back games for the first time this year on Tuesday. We'll talk about that more in segment. But next, I want to get into this outfield situation. The Braves have been one of the worst outfields in all of baseball this year. And we were talking about them having one of the best coming into the season. We'll talk about that and how the Braves should handle it next. The NBA playoffs are here starting on Tuesday night, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. The Atlanta Hawks start their road to an NBA championship on Tuesday night as they face off against the Orlando Magic. They are 5-point underdogs in that game. So you can go check that out and all of the NBA playoff odds over at FanDuel.com. You're interested in the Braves World Series odds. We talked about it throughout the offseason. They were typically had either the second or third best odds. Well, with their slow start, they have slipped down to the fifth best odds to win the World Series right now on FanDuel at plus 1,300, but they're behind two teams in their own division in the Mets and the Phillies who have jumped them for World Series odds, the best World Series odds over on FanDuel. Also, make sure you visit FanDuel.com/playsafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way you play. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. So the Atlanta Braves outfield situation is one that is rough at the moment. And you knew that could be the case early on with Ronald Acuna Jr., obviously delayed coming back. And then especially once you got the news of Jerickson Profar's PED suspension. But the Braves outfielders are 29th in all of baseball in F4 at negative 0.8. Eli White is the only Braves outfielder with a positive F4. And that's really just based on a very limited sample size. So let's take a look at the candidates for the outfield situation and how the Braves maybe should handle things going forward or how things might change with Verdugo coming back possibly this week, Ronald Acuna Jr. coming back in the next 2 to 3 weeks. What could the outfield potentially look like over that span and when Ronald returns? The one thing we know, Michael Harris isn't going anywhere. He is going to be your starting center fielder. He's just got to pick it up. And despite his early struggles, he's going to be out there each and every day, although we've already seen him get an off day. We've seen him get moved down to the lineup, and I think you got to do that until he can get going. But as I've mentioned, with all the early struggles of Braves hitters, whether it was Riley's early struggles, some people believe Matt Olson's struggling. I'm not one of them. Ozzie Albies, others in the lineup who have been struggling early on. I've said that Michael Harris's struggles concern me the most. And it's partly just because of the swing decisions, which have been an issue with Michael Harris since coming up. But you just hoped at some point those were going to get better. And if anything, it feels like they've gotten worse so far this year. And maybe you shouldn't be as worried. He's been a typical slow starter so far early in his career. A 696 OPS in March, April, a 513 OPS in June in his career. So he has been a really slow starter so far. I think that was supposed to say May. But then he usually takes off in the final 2 months. We're hoping this was the year that he's healthy and that he could be good from beginning to end. But he just looks completely lost at the plate right now. Still playing good defense as he typically does. But certainly the Braves need him to get things going quickly. And he's got to figure out those swing decisions. You cannot keep swinging at curveballs bouncing in front of the plate with 2 strikes. It's not good, to say the least. Now, some other candidates in the outfield. Jarred Kelenic, he does have a minor league option left, which makes him a prime candidate to get sent down when Verdugo or anybody else comes up. The walks have been nice lately after starting the year with no walks in the first 3 series. He picks up all those walks against the Phillies, so maybe showing some signs of in-season improvement. However, it's still a 38% strikeout rate, and I don't care how much you're walking, you can't strike out nearly 40% of the time. And the Braves are a team that have a lot of strikeouts and have been struggling in that regard, and much of that is because of the outfield. And you just can't have a guy like that in your lineup that's striking out 38% of the time. And I've talked about this a lot, so my everydayers, I'm sorry for hearing the same point listed over and over. But for those final 3 spots in the batting order, I would much rather see a guy like a Nick Allen who might only hit 10 home runs, and maybe that's pushing it, but a guy who can do other things for you, can put the ball in play, can steal bases. I'd rather see an Alex Verdugo, who we'll talk about in a second, who, yeah, maybe he's not going to give you more than 12 or 15 home runs, but he's not going to strike out a lot. He's going to put the ball in play. I would rather see those types of guys at the bottom of your order than somebody that's going to strike out 30% of the time, but maybe they hit 15 to 20 home runs for you. It's a similar situation for Brian De La Cruz. He has 2 options left, so a candidate to get sitting down at some point. He's contacting the ball well when he makes contact, but he's also striking out 38% of the time. So 2 of your primary outfielders early on in the season are both striking out nearly 40% of the time. You can't have that in your lineup, especially not, like I said, at the bottom of the. And Brian De La Cruz has been batting 4th or 5th a lot for this team lately. You just can't have that. He's more of a liability in the outfield defensively too, which hurts him. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets sent down soon. As for Stuart Fairchild, this was kind of the response to Jerickson Profar going down. I wouldn't be surprised if the Braves just simply let him go when Alex Verdugo is ready. He is out of options, so the Braves couldn't send him down. Not much of a sample size to go off of, so I really don't have a lot to say on Stuart Fairchild, but he just hasn't gotten enough run. And like I said, he was the response to Profar going down. So when another outfielder is ready, it wouldn't shock me if the Braves just simply let him go. But because you have options with Kelenic and De La Cruz, you could keep that depth and send one of them down, since neither one of them are exactly performing well either. Eli White, he's probably the favorite right now amongst Braves fans because in his small sample size this year, he has actually delivered. He is out of options. And I think because of his versatility and being able to play the infield, which I was really impressed by in spring training, especially at second base, the arm was very strong. So I think he could handle shortstop in an emergency situation if needed. He's got that speed off the bench. I think Eli White deserves to be on this roster just because of the different things that he can do for you. Filling in, being a defensive replacement in the outfield, being a pinch runner. I think he just has more versatility and more benefit keeping him on the roster, and he's out of options. So I think Eli White is certainly safe. I think if anybody is going to be cut, sent down with Alex Verdugo coming up, it's going to be either Kelenic, De La Cruz, or Fairchild. And I think it's going to be Jarred Kelenic that gets sent down. And as I've said, and Lindsey Crosby has said as well, I think it's either the best or the worst situation for Jarred Kelenic. Either he gets sent down, he continues to work on the things that he's been taught. He takes it as a challenge to really get it together as his last chance, with the Braves at least, to prove that he can be an everyday player, or he shrugs his shoulders, goes down, and just continues to disappoint, quite frankly, from the prospect that he was. But I do think it's hopefully going to be the best thing for him to be able to go down, play every day, continue to work on the adjustments that he's made, and hopefully figure things out. Let's talk about Alex Verdugo now, who is out of options, signed a big league deal, so he'll be activated when he is ready, which I think will be this week. I was a little surprised we didn't see him activated on Monday, but maybe because they were facing a lefty, and with the Marcell Ozuna news, they wanted to wait a couple more days on that. But Alex Verdugo, 4 for 26 at AAA so far, 2 home runs, 2 walks to 4 strikeouts. He might bring some energy to this team that could be needed, some energy that Profar was supposed to bring. I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent here, but the Profar thing is really starting to aggravate me because he was obviously the big signing. He was supposed to help bring to this Braves lineup what it desperately needed in an on-base guy. And he was supposed to bring that character and that enthusiasm that you saw him bring with the Padres last year. And now that's not there. And I think it's not completely, but I think it's partly a factor in the Braves' early season struggles when you lose a player like that you were expecting so much from, that was your big season off-season acquisition, and then just to lose them like that and to lose them to PEDs, that's got to affect the clubhouse in some ways. But Alex Verdugo, career strikeout rate of 15%, so he should at least put the ball in play. Not much speed, though. He does have a good arm in the outfield, but obviously won't have a ton of range with that lack of speed. So, again, Alex Verdugo isn't going to be the savior of this Braves offense. Don't misunderstand me in saying this, but I do think he's probably the best option for what the Braves have right now, which isn't saying much. Left-handed batter, obviously, can put the ball in play, is not going to strike out, can bring some energy and fire to the team, has a strong arm in the outfield. So I think Alex Verdugo probably is the best option for what the Braves have. And like I said, he signed to a major league deal. They're going to give him a chance when he's ready. And I think it is going to be Jared Kelenic that gets optioned whenever that is the case, whenever he is ready. And then finally, obviously, Ronald Acuna Jr. He is getting evaluated in LA this week. If all goes well there, he can begin doing outfield drills, starting to make some cut moves on that knee, which would be a big step for him. And then if all of that goes well, he could start a rehab assignment in, I don't know, maybe the next week or two, with the hopes of him coming back in early May. And obviously when he returns, that is the big boost. I hate to call anyone, the savior of anything, but I think he could be a real boost to this Braves offense. I've talked about the lack of athleticism, and who knows what Ronald's going to look like now, coming back from 2 ACL injuries. But I am excited about the prospect of what he could do for this team. There's another factor to this that I want to touch on, in that I said I think Kelenic goes down for Verdugo. The question becomes, with Marcell Ozuna, if he goes on the IL, how do you handle Drake Baldwin in the catcher spot? I want to talk more about that here next. Basketball and hockey playoffs are heating up, and there's no better way to turn your sports knowledge into real rewards than with Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you simply pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and you're in. You can even combine players across sports, basketball, hockey, baseball, and more. Yes, there are other sports going on. I know I'm completely locked into baseball, but there are other sports out there for your chance to win up to 2,000 times your cash. For example, if Luka Doncic is projected to score for more than 28 points, or Jason Tatum for more than 8 rebounds, all you would do is pick more or less based on those projections. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Thank you as always, making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. Go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen, solely keeping you up to date with everything happening around Major League Baseball and the guys over on MLB Game Night, recapping the biggest games and moments from each and every night. You get all that in your Locked On MLB podcast feed. Now, I want to get into another situation here, because Marcell Ozuna out of the lineup on Monday, sore hip, considered day-to-day, sent back to Atlanta to have more evaluation on that hip, as right now they're just calling it inflammation. So he's getting an MRI to see if there's any more damage there, but he is going to at least miss the Blue Jays series. So this brings up a bit of a conundrum for the Atlanta Braves in what they do with Drake Baldwin. And we talked about this on the postcast last night, but so far, you haven't seen Brian Snitker utilize Drake Baldwin at all. And with Sean Murphy as hot as he is, you can't take him out of the lineup. But not even in pinch hit situations. You had Sean Murphy get hit in the elbow, and it looked pretty painful. And you still didn't put Drake Baldwin in the game once it became a blowout on Monday night. And that only can lead me to believe that Brian Snitker is not going to use Drake Baldwin unless it's an emergency situation, because he doesn't want to risk losing his catcher. So what this means is if you are going to get Drake Baldwin spots or opportunities in the DH, and look, it was a lefty starter on Monday night, which is why they went with Brian De La Cruz in the DH spot. We'll see with a righty on the mound on Tuesday if they give Drake Baldwin the start there with Sean Murphy at catcher. But if Brian Snitker's hesitancy to use Drake Baldwin off the bench, to give him a shot in the DH role with Ozuna out, is because he doesn't want to lose that extra catcher, then you got to get a third catcher because Drake Baldwin is your best bat on the bench, I believe. And so if Ozuna is out for an extended period of time, you've got to give Drake Baldwin those at-bats, which means you have to put a third catcher on the roster. And so we'll see how that plays out once we get more news of Marcell Ozuna. But you also just can't keep wasting Drake Baldwin on the bench. He needs some at-bats. He is getting good experience. You saw him in the dugout talking to some of the pitchers, and obviously saw the other night when he was talking with Sean Murphy in the dugout. So he's getting some good experience that way, but he needs more than that. He needs some at-bats. He needs to play. But hopefully the Atlanta Braves get some good news on Marcell Ozuna, and he won't be out for a while, but that will certainly be something to watch. If he is, what do the Braves do with the bench? Because as we just talked about with the outfield situation, Kelnick goes down when Verdugo goes up, I think. But if you have to carry a third catcher, then Fairchild has to go, or either Brian De La Cruz has to be optioned, and you go with one less outfielder at that point. But we'll see how everything plays out there. But that is something to consider, how the Braves might handle that, because Drake Baldwin is the best option for your DH if Ozuna goes down. But then you're going to need to carry that third catcher. Some other Braves news: Craig Kimbrell continues to ramp up at Double-A. Talked about Aaron Bummer. He returned from the bereavement list, and Michael Peterson was sent back down. I hope he has frequent flyer miles because he's been up and down a lot here recently. And then, as I also alluded to, no word on Alex Verdugo. Thought he might be activated on Monday, but he was not. We'll see if he gets activated at some point this week or if he's back in Gwinnett on Tuesday afternoon. I think they're playing an afternoon game on Tuesday. Speaking of Tuesday, let's talk about the Braves game on Tuesday against the Blue Jays, starting at 7:07 p.m. Eastern. It is Spencer Schwellenbach versus Kevin Gausman. Schwellenbach, he's been nothing short of brilliant through his first three starts of the year. My only worry is that this game is humbling, and sometimes baseball just happens, and you're going to have a bad start at some point. I really hope it doesn't come on Tuesday, because I really want to see the Braves win back-to-back games. That's my only wish right now for this team is, can you please win back-to-back games? That's where we're at the middle of April. But hopefully Spencer Schwellenbach can continue to do what he's been doing, and there's no reason to believe that he won't, other than it's just baseball. And sometimes that happens. Old friend Kevin Gausman's been really good to start the year. In his last start against the Red Sox, he went 8 innings with 10 strikeouts and no walks. The splitter, you look at his underlying data, and it's kind of odd. The splitter isn't getting a lot of whiffs right now, and that's been his go-to pitch, but nobody's squaring it up. They're still not getting a lot of hits on it. He's just not getting the swing and miss with that pitch. But it's the four-seamer that's really making a difference for him right now. Last year, teams teed off on his four-seamer, hitting .298 against it with just a 17% whiff rate. So far this year, they're hitting just .135 against his four-seam fastball with a 25% whiff rate. That's huge on a four-seamer. So he is off to a really good start to the season, but hopefully his luck will run out on Tuesday night. Spencer Schwellenbach will dominate like he's done all year, and hopefully this offense will continue. I said wrongly on the postcast the other night that we haven't seen a win like that from the Braves all year, but we did against Miami in the home opener. Had a big win there, but what did they do the next day? They followed it up with a dud, and you can't have that happen again. You can't have a big game, a big performance offensively like you had on Monday night, and then follow it up with a dud on Tuesday. That just can't be the case if this Braves team is going to get rolling and go on a streak, which they need to overcome their slow start. So we need the offense to continue what they did on Monday. You need Spencer Schwellenbach to continue what he's been doing. Bullpen should be fresh and ready to go for this one. Let's do it, Braves. Back-to-back wins. I know you can do it. Let's hope that it happens on Tuesday night. We'll be back on the postcast after that one to recap everything, and I'll be back with you on Wednesday night to go over everything that happened in the finale as well and cover the rest of the Blue Jays series. So make sure you subscribe to Locked On Braves. Hit that thumbs up button. Leave me a comment down below. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.